So I'm praying for a tree. I want a tree. I want a redwood tree. And what shows up is this little thing. And what's that? That's not what I prayed for, and I throw it away. There's the life of prayer in a nutshell. My kids and I were in California, and we went to a place called Big Basin, and it has the tallest redwood trees south of way up north where the really, really big ones are. But I mean, we're talking 35 stories, really huge. And I remember us were going through the first growth redwoods, and the energy is so powerful. And there were two big trees near each other. One's called the mother of the forest, and one's called the father of the forest. And the mother of the forest was the taller of the two. And it hadn't always been that way. The father of the forest had been taller, but it was hit by lightning. So now the mother of the forest was taller. But I was reading the sign, and I said to the kids, wow, the mother of the forest is taller of the two, and the father of the forest is fatter. And the kids say, yeah, just like in our family. And as we're walking along, the kids are like picking up these little things, and they say, what are these things? What are these things? Surely they look like miniature pine cones, but these aren't pine trees, and they're too small. And they certainly wouldn't be, a little thing like this wouldn't grow something that would be 350 feet tall. And the answer is, those were the seeds. Those were the seeds. And furthermore, those seeds could never grow a redwood tree unless it had one ingredient, a special ingredient, and it's fire. There has to be a fire. And we had just been down at Big Sur, and they'd had a fire about 10 minutes earlier. And it really had damaged things badly, but I'd never seen this. And I'd been in redwood forests all my life. I grew up in Oakland Hills. I'd be at redwood forests. I'd hike through them every weekend. And I never saw this because I'd never been in a redwood forest soon after a fire. There were seedlings coming up everywhere. It looked like bamboo. I mean, it was everywhere because all of those seeds had been burst open and their potential coming forth from the fire. This is an analogy for us that we pray for an answer, and what we get is a seed, and then we get hit by fire, and then the growth takes place, and it's a process. My faith is a process of growth. Together, my faith is a process of growth. And so this out of a little something. A friend of mine once said, I pray for marbles. I keep praying to God for marbles, and I get these clunky little rocks. And then after I'm getting mad at God, I realize, oh my gosh, they're diamonds in the rough. That there is this which if I work with it, if I polish it, if I work with it, something good can come out of it. Every circumstance of a limitation in your life that you don't like is designed to grow you. Every situation that I don't like is designed to grow me. Together, every situation that I don't like is designed to grow me. How many of you have heard of Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond? Raise your hand. She's one of the greatest, she's an MD. She's one of the greatest teachers and practitioners of healing. She works in the Jewish tradition as well as the medical faith, and she works with stories. And she's a very interesting person. Now, I quoted her, but her whole ministry, which is really what it is, her whole service to people, and all those people that she's helped to facilitate their healings came out of deep disappointment and difficulty, which she worked with creatively and let the fire open her up. This is what she said: healing is not a matter of mechanism. It is a work of spirit. We need to remember that at the very heart of spirit is mystery. And the problem with the mind is that the mind does not tolerate mystery. So we don't want mystery. We want the end result. Somebody was telling me between services that isn't it interesting that in our culture, we want to jump to the ending. We want to jump to the conclusion. We want to see how it turns out. But isn't it true that throughout history, everything is a story? It's always a story. It's always an unfoldment. Your life is a story. It's a process. Your healing journey is a process. My healing journey is a process. Together, my healing journey is a process. It's a process of unfoldment. And it is a process of unfoldment that is supported by your spiritual practices. supported by your spiritual practice is supported by group spiritual practice. This is something very interesting. Another Redwood story, James Dillard Freeman, Unity's poet laureate, the director of Silent Unity for decades, he wrote the prayer for protection, the affirmation, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. You've been touched by his work without knowing it many times. And he was coming out to speak at our church in California, and I asked him, what would you like? You have a day here, what can I do? He said, I only want 2 things. I want to go to the ocean, and I want to go to a first growth redwood forest. And he explained to me a second growth wouldn't work, because there were lots of second growth because they'd been logged, and they were tall trees, 250 feet tall in some cases, but he said there was something different when it's been growing there for 2,200 years. In a first growth redwood forest, there's been a building up of an energy, and he says they can feel the vibration. It is a healing experience. He was dealing with some things in his life, and he wanted to be supported in his healing journey by the group consciousness of a redwood grove. And he explained to me, when I took him to this one unlogged, it was very small, it was about 2 blocks wide, redwood grove of first growth, he said, feel this energy, and we could feel it. It almost was like it was going, this deep hum of energy. You could take it in, you could soak it into your beingness. And he said, do you feel that? Do you know that happens only in a group setting? Because a redwood tree, you'll never see a redwood tree stand alone because their roots are shallow and they intertwine with each other. They're right below the surface. If a redwood tree stood alone, it would just topple over. But it takes community. We have the World Day of Prayer coming up on Wednesday night, and then we have our prayer vigil, which you could be a part of if you sign up for it out there. But the reason why we join together on Tuesday nights in silent meditation, the reason why we join together in this consciousness of this church, is that we're able to do together as a group something that we couldn't do individually. And he was the director of Silent Unity at the time, he shared that's what Silent Unity was about. Unity's prayer ministry was people all over the world praying at the same time in many cases, doing their work, doing their practices, reading the same daily word lesson, 1 million people, and doing the same work, and building this, and supporting each other by intertwining and creating a group consciousness. That's what this church is about. And it's not about getting a specific outcome or a result. And that is something that I would love to see a book out there called The Law of Detachment from Outcomes. But nobody's going to write that book. But it's about, and they found this out in so many studies, if you want better results, you got to detach from the result. Joan Borisenko, I always talk about the Harvard study. People have to have a shift in consciousness first. It's not about getting an outer result. It's about moving and growing. Rachel Naomi Raymond was a good example of it. At the age of 15, she had been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, was told that she probably wouldn't live until she was 40. She had 8 surgeries. She became a medical doctor. She did this work, and then this guy showed up in her first year of internship, who in those days, she said, she's now almost 80. She said in those days they didn't have hospices, so if you're going to die, they'd put you in the hospital, and we were taking care of this guy. And he was riddled with cancer. She said his bones were like Swiss cheese. He had snowballs of cancer in his lungs. There was no way he was going to last more than a few days. He stayed with us for 2 weeks and all the cancer disappeared. And they couldn't figure out what happened. One thing that happened, though, that was weird, is he got angry. And that doesn't fit anybody's picture of healing. But he processed latent anger and released it. You see, it's not about staying stuck and ain't it awful. It's about releasing and dealing with what's really there. Finding out what's underneath it. Finding out what's going on and then letting it go. And furthermore, then he began to open up. Open up, open up. And she said that we studied him. She said, you think we'd be all filled with awe. She said, no, we were angry. We're angry because it didn't fit any of our models. It didn't fit any of our pictures. And that puzzle, that mystery, is what started her on her journey. And it also led to her healing experiences. And she began to kind of work with this. And she began to realize, the relationship between the doctor and the patient could be a healing one on a level of consciousness a spiritual kind of relationship. And so she got grants for it, and all the grants disappeared. So she was working so hard to get more grants for it because that's what she was doing, and she couldn't get one. But while she was doing this, people kept calling her saying, will you work with me? I've got this diagnosis, mostly cancer patients. And she said, no, I don't do that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just doing this research work. That's all I'm doing. And then all the money dried up, and she didn't have anything to do, and she didn't have any income, so she said, okay, come on over. She lives in a houseboat. They'd come over, and she started this thing, and it grew, 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 because it was a lumpy little rock. It was a little tiny thing. You know, there are big ideas, and there are God ideas. And God ideas don't look like big ideas most of the time. You know, I'm always very suspicious when somebody comes to me with big ideas. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be ambitious or do whatever, but I'm talking, you know, this magical big ideas. This is one of the problems in American religion today. We're going to make a big idea rather than we're going to meet the needs of the person in the third row. We're going to serve the need of the person who's the client in a chaplain praying with him. We're going to take care of what's here. And like Alcoholics Anonymous, like the revolution in India, like everything, it starts one drop at a time. So there are big ideas and there are God ideas, and God ideas don't always look flashy. In fact, they almost always don't look flashy. They almost always look counter to what Jesus called the world. And what he meant by the world was the way everybody's thinking. And you know how everybody's thinking. Just go on the internet. You know, it's all about outrage. And I'm outraged at you, and you're outraged at me, and you're this, and you're that. And the big ideas, we think that will make a difference. But God ideas are like, well, 2,000 years ago, a baby's born in a foreign country, in a stable, in a feed box, where it's the most unrealistic. You could never expect anything good to come out of that. It's a God idea. The baby grew. And there was lots and lots of process to it, and continues to be lots and lots of process. That doesn't mean you aren't going to get outcomes, but the outcomes will be better and more appropriate to the extent that you work with, and you grow through, and you move with these so-called limitations, and you allow yourself to learn from them. And not be stuck in them. You know, James Philip Freeman, while he was out there, he talked to me about the book he wrote, The Story of Unity. How many people have read the book, The Story of Unity? It's a great read. It's a wonderful book. And it's 1/3 the size of the original book he wrote. 2/3 of it, he said, had been edited out of it against his wishes by people who felt that it was just too negative. Because it talked about the process that the Fillmores went through, successfully overcoming so many things, how they struggled but triumphed in the end, and people didn't want to deal with the process because we look for magical solutions. We want the magical guru, we want the magical thing, and it means we've got to engage ourselves. We've got to let go of our ideas of perfection and what spirituality looks like. It doesn't mean that it's a horrible, hard slog. It means that we've got to embrace the process and the possibility that's there. Rachel Raymond says, sometimes what appears to be a catastrophe, over time, becomes a strong foundation from which you can live a good life. It's possible to live a good life, even though it may not be an easy life. And I think that's one of the best kept secrets in America. We've got to let go of the instant solutions. We've got to let go and realize, okay, then how do I engage this? How do I live my life, a life of faith? Well, we can look at Peter's a good example of this. Charles Fillmore said that Peter was the disciple who represented faith. And I remember, after I started reading the Bible a little bit, going, that doesn't make any sense. He's the guy who couldn't walk on water because he sunk, because he had no faith. He's the guy who denied him 3 times after promising him he'd follow him to the end of the earth because he had no faith. And the reason why is because he learned from those experiences and realized and embraced the process. And as a result, he had something to offer. It's like Rachel Naomi Raymond, 8 surgeries, went through so many experiences, but she came through it. And you're saying, but I don't want to deal with catastrophe. ask for a fee. Well, you're going to have some. Everybody's got some, but you've got to go through a process regardless. And the minute you let go, and I let go of our addictive need to have things look and turn out a certain way for us to be satisfied, the minute we recognize that this physical world is not designed to just give us what we want, but rather to be worked with. It's a seed. I prayed to God for a tree. Where's my tree? It's a seed. I got to work with it. I got to cultivate it, and I've got to let those times of fire break me open and open up that potential. And so working with this, not staying stuck in any circumstance, being creative about it, and being in what she called mystery, the mystery of things. And working with our attitudes. Today's talk was supposed to be on faith, but it was going to be about two things, and I was told, no, you need to talk about deeper stuff. Don't be so shallow. But I can talk about these two things that had come up initially that is very much my kind of nerdy stuff. I read a study, an economic study of the countries of Europe. Yeah, here I go. And in it, they asked themselves, what are the conditions in the psychology of the people of the countries that show up for prosperous and poverty-stricken countries in Europe? And they worked with it, and they found out two things that were amazing that have to do with faith. When I finally get around to it, I'll tell you what it is. The first thing is that in the present moment, the biggest indicator of prosperity and good economy is that they have integrity, that they follow the rule of law, that people do what they say they're going to do, that they follow through, that you can trust and rely on things, which tells us, in terms of our own faith, if we want to have success in our prayers, in our life, in our soul's development, we got to follow up what we say we're going to do with something. We got to give ourselves back up. We've got to not just have a good first act, but we've got to have a good second act. I remember my organ teacher telling me, when you're playing a song, you can mess up the beginning, you can screw it up in the middle, but make the ending glorious. You know, you got to back it up and move with it, and practice your practices. It's not about making it a big drudgery or anything else, but it means offloading the things that aren't serving you. And ask yourself this question: what spiritual practice, if I did it more effectively or more, would make the biggest difference in my life, positively? What spiritual practice, if I did it better or more, would give me the best result? Something you know about. Then ask yourself, after you get over, why am I not doing it? Ask yourself, how can I engage that? How can I implement that? How can I put that to work in my life? Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. One of the practices that I've shared here is from that book, You Can Heal Your Life, by Louise Hay. How many people have read Louise Hay's? And so get out your old copy or download it, because it's offered for free online. It's called You Can Heal Your Life. It's Louise Hay. And in the book, it's so interesting. She has all these conditions. Some of them are parts of the body or emotional conditions or illnesses. And then she has affirmations, affirmative statements that you're supposed to work with if you find yourself with whatever that thing is on the left. You work with that affirmation, like, it's safe to be me, or, I'm an unfolding soul, or whatever the thing is. And the thing that's interesting is that not a single one of those has anything to do with the symptom or an outcome. None of them. None of them have to do with the symptom or an outcome. They all have to do with the soul's unfoldment, the soul's growth. And she, of course, worked with so many people, just as Rachel Naomi Raymond did, who had incredible healings and incredible experiences through not focusing on the result, the outcome, but detaching from the outcome and working instead on your consciousness. Because in the end, whether or not you get a physical outcome, you've always got your consciousness. In the allness and the ongoingness of your soul, which is an eternal soul, your consciousness, faith is like a muscle. Faith is like a muscle. And we all have muscles, but are we developing those muscles? And it's not about the thing that we're dealing with, it's about the muscle that you build. And the muscle that you're building is your consciousness. So what I found is to take that book, You Can Heal Your Life, and I've taken some of the affirmations of things that I'm working on in my life. I look it up, and I read them into a little recording device, and it's about a minute's worth of affirmations, and I'll play back one, sit with it till my mind wanders, play back another one, and I'll go on for long periods of time. And of course my mind's going to wander, but I'll work with it, and eventually it grows in energy. Now that may not appeal to you, that's just a technique. But there's so many ways to engage with not getting an outcome, not, oh, where's my tree, but working with the process that life brings to you as you do this work and developing the consciousness that is necessary to grow into the soul that you could potentially be. I grow into the soul that I could potentially be. Together? I grow into the soul that I can potentially be. And this World Day of Prayer is a way for us to support each other as a group. We support each other as a group. There are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are doing this work all at the same time. There are billions of people who have been working with these spiritual principles for hundreds and thousands of years. We're plugging into it like plugging into a redwood forest energy after 2,000 years of growing in community. We do this. We constantly work with our principles. We constantly grow with our principles. So it's like a workshop that we do together. You know, and Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, James Philip Freeman said, in the parts of the book they threw away, there's so many incredible overcomings. For instance, they formed unity when they were rich. They were worth in the tens of millions of dollars. He'd made a killing in real estate development and developed large parts of what's now Kansas City. And she'd overcome 2 terminal illnesses. He'd overcome 1 possibly terminal illness, and they'd done all these things. Their neighbors had come to them, and now they had all this money. They're going to retire and maybe put out a few little pamphlets and pray with people. And it was wonderful. It was really cushy until the bottom fell out. They lost everything. There was the Great Depression of 1890. They lost everything. She was down to no money at all. It was Christmas. She couldn't give any presents to her 3 children. Somebody laid $5 on her, and she was able to go out and buy 1 present for each of her children. During that week, they were going to come and repossess all the printing presses that Unity had, and that's that famous story you've heard about where he's going to give a talk on Sunday, and she says, what's it about? He says, about the power of faith, and she says, well, you need to go write the talk for yourself, never mind them, and I'll go in the other room and I'll be praying with you about it. And they worked with it, and they worked with it. That, he said, we're ruined. He told her, we're ruined. They're going to come and repossess all of our stuff. And then he had a divine idea on Monday when they showed up to repossess stuff. He said, I'm the rich child of a loving father. And they thought he was talking about an earthly father and let him keep the stuff for a few more days, and they pulled it out. They didn't know we're talking about God. So it's a divine idea. They worked with these things. They created Silent Unity as a dedicated prayer ministry. Their publications, their Sunday services. All of this worked together. And he said 2 things. One is that Unity never would have been a permanent fixture and had lasting power had they not gone through the hard times and then reached down for these resources. And he said, what good would it have done for us to teach all these wonderful things without having demonstrated them? And the second thing is that it really was an opportunity for them to base what they were doing in true spiritual service. And it made them change their focus completely. Anything you're working with right now can be dealt with creatively. Anything you're working with can be one of those little seeds. One of those little seeds. And whatever you're dealing with, it's just the outforming of an inner consciousness growth that you need to go through. I remember a woman coming to me for counseling, and she had an ovarian cyst the size of a grapefruit, and she was sharing with me about her story. She'd grown up in Japan, and she shared with me about how I shared with her that sometimes people who have illnesses, they have something maybe that they need to let go of. That's and she said, well, my parents actually had my other ovary removed when I was a child in an optional surgery that they really shouldn't have done, and I've resented them all these years. So she came to what we had like our Tuesday night silent meditation and did her forgiveness and healing work. And then we had a prosperity series, like we're going to do Prosperity Plus in a couple weeks. And she did the work there. And as she did the work, week after week after week, I think it took her a year and a half, but the cyst disappeared. It just disappeared. She couldn't get it operated on without not being able to ever have a baby again. And she wanted to have a baby. So she just worked on it like that, and it just disappeared. But then she took she was still doing the work week after week in the meditation time. She took the prosperity course again, and she had become pregnant, and she was suffering terribly with morning sickness. She was even hospitalized for it. So it was a process. It was difficult. Her body was, still kind of working with it. But she worked with it, and she worked with it, and she had a baby boy. And the chapter is found in the book Out of the Blue by Stretton Smith. She actually wrote a chapter of that book about this story, working with the principles, working with this, and knowing that it's an ongoing thing, but she had to uncover what was underneath it and release it. So we each have these things in our own lives. We each have these things in our own lives, and we have to work on them. We support each other in them. We have interlocking roots. In the Prosperity Plus series, people say, why do you do these series? It's because it's almost like a cooking class. You show up at the cooking class, and they got all the ingredients and all the things, and there's other people there to support you, and you work on whatever it is, and you grow and learn together. But it's important for us to grow and change and express our being. So I'm just getting to open up right now, and we're preparing for our World Day of Prayer Week. We're preparing for whatever our next step is in our spiritual consciousness and development. And we move right now with our soul. And once again, we let go of our pictures of outcomes. We let go and we ask ourselves, if in this moment I knew that all things work together for good, that all is well, that everything is lifted up to its highest possibility, how would that feel to me? If I knew that I was in the midst of a wonderful healing process, a learning and a growing that needed no outcome to build the spiritual muscles of faith, that in and of itself contained and sustained all the growth that I needed, how would things look to me? And I'll do whatever I can do to stay in this presence, for this presence. This is my seed. This is my diamond. And so it is. And now we're going to go on a soul's journey. So take a deep breath, let it out, and set aside everything that you have in your hands, and maybe even turn your hand's palm upward, because we're going to feel the tingling of the energy in the palms of our hands and our inside of our fingers. Feel this energy. Be aware that if you can feel this energy and it's invisible, then there must be more of it, and you must be made of it. I am an energetic being. And by increasing your awareness of its presence, you're increasing its energy, its life force, its light. I am a being of energy. And I recognize that having perfect faith has nothing to do with outcomes. It has to do with this present moment's experience. An embracing of the process of unfoldment, the mystery. And now we take another deep breath and we let it out. And we move into a deeper experience of this energy. And And we ask ourselves, if I could feel what it was like to feel that all was well, how would I feel? What would that be like? If I knew that everything was unfolding exactly as it should, and that I was capable of maximizing the potential for good, accepting that which is and moving with it and growing with it. If I knew that I was headed towards the highest possible outcome, the best available result, how would I feel? And live in that moment. And when your mind wanders to the story or to the problem, bring yourself back to that question. What would it be like if I knew that all was well? How would I feel? Whatever my need is, healing, an outcome, I bring myself back to this answer. If I knew that all was working together for good, how would it feel to me? How would that change my energy, my countenance? Healing, Rachel Naomi Raymond writes, is not a matter of mechanism. It is a work of spirit. The very heart of spirit is mystery, even when the mind does not tolerate mystery. So open up to this moment and know that something mysterious and wonderful is taking place within you. And again, bring yourself back to that openness, that mystery. If I knew that everything was well, how would I feel in this moment? And build upon that. Be present in that. Feel the energy lift and dwell in its presence. I let go of my ideas of perfection, what I thought was perfect. And I move and I flow and I learn and I grow. I am a work in process. What is really valuable to me is my spiritual growth. And I embrace this experience that's unfolding me and growing me. And I am so grateful.
So today our offering statement is, I give in faith and I receive in faith. Together,
I give in faith and I receive in faith.
And silently, and again aloud together,
I give in faith and I receive in faith.
Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen.